Welcome back to the Pittsburgh Sports Cast. It has been almost a year, but we are finally back. We're going to call this season two. Welcome everybody to season two, episode one. If you're not familiar with our podcast, this is the podcast where two college kids discuss all things Pittsburgh sports, hopefully, this time all year round. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're going to just be basically catching up. The Steelers, of course, just yesterday played their first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game against the Dallas Cowboys, coming away with the victory. But there's a lot to take away from that. So we'll get into that. And then we'll just be talking about what the Pirates and the Penguins have been up to over this past summer. So if we'll get right into it, we'll start things off with the basically story of the day so far, the Hall of Fame game over in Canton, Ohio. Of course, the Steelers having a ton of guys coming into the Hall of Fame. We got Troy Polamalu, Alan Faneca, of course, the big man, head coach Bill Cowher going in as well. And so they finally get to play the Cowboys in a game that was supposed to be played a year ago. And they came out victorious 16-3. Chris, initial thoughts. I guess we can start out with just like the opening drives. I guess you could just open the floor with whatever you want to start.
I think that the biggest takeaway for me is going to be the quarterback position, because I think if you look at the roster, especially offensively, I think a lot of things are set in stone. Right, you know who your receiving core is. You know who, you're obviously drafting Najee Harris in the first round. Your running back, quarterback. Again, it's going to be Ben. Defensively, I think the only question defensively is who's replacing Mike Hilton as slot corner. So I think the biggest question is between the three backup QBs in Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins, and Josh Dobbs. Because realistically, you're going to keep Ben, he's going to be your starter. Then you're going to have a backup who you're going to, dress in case they get hurt or he gets hurt. And then you're going to have someone on the practice squad. So that's really only three quarterbacks you can really keep. And that's really two on the roster, and then one will be a scratch probably. So I think that's going to be the most interesting battle. If you listen to Pittsburgh media, which, can be unique, to say the least, when it comes to Steelers football. You have, like, Dwayne Haskins is a very polarizing player within the fan base, because some people are like, he's the savior, he's Ben's replacement. Other people are saying, no, he hasn't proven himself, he's no way going to replace Ben. So I think he's the biggest question mark, because if you look at the first couple drives, I didn't think Mason Rudolph played bad, per se. I know he had the fumble, but I also don't know who that's on. Is that the center? Is that on the center for snapping it too early? Is that on Claypool for not catching it because it was a jet sweep? And us being Pitt football fans, we know when Matt Canada was offensive coordinator at Pitt, he ran a lot of jet sweeps with Quadre Henderson. So you don't know if that was a jet sweep, if, the timing's off. So I'm not going to put the fumble on Mason Rudolph. He had the nice throw to Chase Claypool for 45 yards that, Claypool had to dive for. I thought Mason Rudolph missed a couple throws. I think another one to Claypool that he put a little on the outside of him where he had the reach and, Claypool dropped it. I do expect Claypool to make that catch, though, hopefully in the regular season. And Dwayne Haskins, I thought he didn't do anything spectacular, but I thought he had good pocket presence. Like Mason Rudolph, and this is a criticism that I've had, granted not necessarily on the podcast because we didn't get to cover the Steelers because of college and we mismanaged our time a little bit, which we plan to do better with and have a finite schedule for when we are releasing this now. So hopefully that will work. But a lot of my concern for Mason Rudolph is that he's not mobile. He doesn't have that pocket presence. You can not be mobile, but still have a really good presence about you, right? You know when to step up, you know when to step out, and that type of thing, which I never I never have really seen from Mason Rudolph. And just watching Dwayne Haskins for like 3 or 4 drives, he engineered a touchdown drive. Now, granted, that was a lot due to the return. Um, I forget the guy's name. He's probably not going to make the team. Let's be real. But he had a nice punt return. And then Haskins engineered the touchdown drive with, I believe, Balaj, who got the touchdown. I just thought his pocket presence was really good. I thought he had good decision making. And Rudolph, though I don't think he played bad, I thought he missed a couple throws, and his pocket presence isn't as good as Haskins.
Yeah, I definitely think that Dwayne Haskins certainly did seem to have more composure in the pocket. I think this is something that the Steelers just kind of had to unlock within him, because I still think that obviously what we saw from Dwayne Haskins in Washington a year ago was not impressive at all. But I do still think that at the end of the day, he's still a talented quarterback. And I think the key to Dwayne Haskins, and based on what we've seen, I think we're starting to kind of experience that a little bit, is kind of break through that little mental blockade, because I think that Dwayne Haskins' issues are a lot more on the mental side and like the disciplinary side based on his antics from last year, especially after he signed with the Steelers. With all the tweets and the stuff that was going on at that point. But I think if we can fix those issues, and, I guess, got to give the sports psychologist a raise if they're successful with that. But I think if you can unlock that, I think we'll be able to find that talent that has been hidden inside Dwayne Haskins.
And not only that, I think people forget that Ben Roethlisberger, when he first came in, it's not like he lit the league up, right? He had Jerome Bettis, who's in the Hall of Fame, speaking of the Hall of Fame game, went in a couple years ago. He had a Hall of Fame type defense, and he wasn't asked to do a lot. And then off the field, I know the city of Pittsburgh values winning a lot. But Ben has had a questionable past. If you remember the motorcycle accident,
Yep.
where he nearly killed himself, let
The
alone
incident in
playing
Atlanta.
football. And then Atlanta, when there was that sexual assault allegation. So it's not like the quarterback who we have has been, this perfect saint. He's had a questionable past where he's made very questionable decisions and has had to mature. So you would hope if Dwayne Haskins can learn something on maturity, he would learn it from Ben. Now the question would be, is Ben willing to teach Dwayne? Is Dwayne willing to listen? That's stuff that we don't entirely know within the locker room, right? That's, kind of locker room stuff that, us fans are not, privy to that information. But you would hope, that he knows this is his second to last chance. Probably his last chance, I just hope he doesn't turn into Josh Gordon, who could never figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Josh
It's
Gordon,
only his
go ahead.
Yeah, it's only his last chance if he sees it as his last chance. I mean, I think if he can, or I should say, if he sees it as his last chance, then it won't be his last chance, because then he'll try to be better and he'll try to get right in the head. If he just sees it nonchalantly as, oh, I'll get another shot, another team will go after me, then it will really be his last chance. Because if he keeps up the antics that he was doing in Washington, he will not find a place in this football team.
And not only that, too, it's like, because the Pittsburgh Steelers have shown an ability or a willingness to, I'll say, to shell out money, right? There are NFL franchises, MLB franchises. We're a fan of one. Where
Wink, wink.
where the owners aren't willing to pay, right? Even within the salary cap, you can look at a team like Carolina, whose GM does not want to pay for anyone, and has let a lot of players walk. Kevin Colbert and the Rooney family have shown they paid AB. They were going to make Bell the highest paid running back of all time, right? So they paid Ben lots and lots of money. So the Rooneys and the Steelers are an organization that's willing to pay a lot of money for um their good players. They're talking about signing T.J. Watt to a huge extension. I know there's been rumors of that. Um, Cam Hayward again they signed. So like the Steelers are willing to pay, and if because Dwayne Haskins has the talent. In our personal life, we have a friend who we know who's a fan of the Washington football team. And, when they let Dwayne Haskins go, we walked up to him and said, you've watched him more than we have, obviously. What are we getting with him? Is there any hope? And what did he say? He said he has a big arm, but he struggles with that decision making, right? So my thing is, if you have the talent, which he was top 15 pick, first rounder, broke a ton of records at Ohio State. He's played in big games before. Then if he could just figure out that decision making, then I feel like there's no reason that he couldn't be Big Ben's successor, which would then with the way the Steelers operate, they're going to pay you. This isn't the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had the all-world defense back in 2017, and then it's 2021, and not a single person's on that defense anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I think that if we can fix that decision making, and I think part of that is again that mental aspect of I think he was kind of apathetic with being able to like get in that, I don't want to call it the classroom, but like the film room, I guess, and being willing to learn. We've seen all those pictures of him out like partying when he could have spent that time actually learning how to better read an NFL defense and make the correct decisions. And I know some of that is just born instinct, but we'll never know how good those instincts are until you put in the work and you show yourself to the maximum capability. The old cliche, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Well, even if you're talented, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're talented, you still got to work hard to prove that your talent's actually superior. But like I said, if what we saw yesterday keeps up, I'd say this is progress. And if he keeps it up and he improves that decision making and continues to show that presence in the pocket, then I think we have ourselves a solid number 2, at least for now, behind Ben Roethlisberger. And again, speaking of Ben Roethlisberger, like you said earlier, it's up to him to see if he's willing to kind of help out Dwayne Haskins.
Absolutely. And I don't know if we mentioned this before, but this is third in. Steelers did win 16-3. In case you weren't able to watch the game. So we did win 16-3. I think from the players who sat out, Juju, I know he missed. I know Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Joe Hayden, Minka Fitzpatrick. I think just about Ben sat, but just about everyone on the offense started. Eric Ebron and Pat Fairmouth are hurt at the moment.
Yeah.
So they weren't able to play. But yeah, I think there's hope. I think we have to be patient, obviously, as well. And at baby steps with Dwayne Haskins. I think we saw what's good. My concern, not necessarily with Dwayne Haskins, but I think just with the team. I think as every Steelers fan's concerned with is that offensive line. Completely reshuffling. I believe 5 new starters. They're saying. That's concerning. Just because, like, if you go back and rewind to the first 2 drives, when Najee Harris, I think, was in the first 2 or 3 drives. He didn't break any long runs. He didn't wow me per se. But as Tomlin said in his interview, he kind of he did the routine things routinely. But the offensive line I didn't think opened a lot of holes for him. There weren't a lot of runs where he went backwards, if you know what I mean. He didn't lose 3, 4, 5 runs. It was always game 2, game 3, game 4, game 2, those type of runs, which I guess is better than what we had. But like people, and I don't know your thoughts on this, but I know like people around Pittsburgh are like, oh, Najee Harris is the next Jerome Bettis. He's the next Le'Veon Bell. He's that next, all-pro running back that we need. And I'm like, he may be a great running back, and I'm not saying he's not, but like, you know what I'm saying? But with that offensive line having so many question marks, I'm not entirely sure if if he's gonna get a chance to shine. Kind of like Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Like Joe Burrow, had a good rookie year. He was showing some signs, but then he tore his ACL because his offensive line was like the worst in the league. So is Najee Harris going to do that? He's going to show us some parts, but not be able to show it to us consistently because our offensive line doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I know. And I think it goes back to you and I were in the school cafe on draft night, and we both practically collapsed to the floor yelling at the TV when Najee got drafted because our first reaction was, we have talented running back, but what's the use if there's no O-line in front of him? And so I don't think the O-line was that bad. I think obviously, like you said, there's still a ton of question marks when you have 5 guys you have to rotate in after all the departures, retirements, and whatnot. But it wasn't terrible. It wasn't quite what I was fearing it to be. Like I said, it's still the preseason, obviously game number 1. But I'm still not convinced, but I'm not disappointed in the O-line so far. It's still my attitude of the O-line kind of like got, if anything, slightly more optimistic.
Yeah, and I think, all of this, and I think fans should know this, should be taken with a grain of salt. Just because it is preseason, and you never know who's going 100%, or whatnot. The playbook's not fully open yet, so this is all, just with a grain of salt, just kind of just reacting to what I saw last night. The one thing that I am concerned about after last night were the drops again.
I
Like
know.
there were 3 or 4 drops again. And I just wonder, granted, it's only preseason as stated, but is this something that's just in their heads? Because all offseason when you talked about the receiving core were the drops. Throw Eric Ebron as a tight end in that conversation. And I know like Claypool dropped one last night. I don't know if Deontay dropped one last night. I don't think he did.
I still remember watching his first catch. I remember giving him a round of applause saying, he caught it. I can't believe it.
Yeah, so I mean, because with the receiving core, because let's be real, the defense was missing 3 starters, and obviously all the backups, and still didn't give up a touchdown, and still looked really good. And I have full faith that the Steelers are once again they were top 5. I don't know if you heard the stat last night, but 3 out of the past 4 seasons they've been a top 5 defense. In the one season they weren't, they were 6th. So the defense is going to be there. So my
Steeler
question
way.
is always going to be on the offensive side of the football. And if we have question marks with the O-line, so we don't know what the running game is going to be, that passing game is going to have to be a lot better than what it was. And it got held back, especially if you look at when we collapsed, is a lot of drop balls, a lot of missed opportunities on the offensive side of the football. And we need to capitalize especially when the defense gives us such good field position, right? With the turnovers and the sacks and everything. And so we just need to capitalize on the red zone, and we need to quit dropping passes. Because if we keep dropping passes, then that's going to be even more reliance on the running game. That's still a question mark, even though we drafted a running back because of the offensive line. So there's still a lot of question marks. And yes, I understand Ben wasn't in there, and the starters weren't in there either, but we didn't score a touchdown until the second half. And that was only because of actually, the 2 touchdowns, we only get 1. No, we got 2, because we got the
Yeah.
Dobbs and the Balaj one. So the two touchdowns that we scored were both off of Dallas Cowboys turnovers, right? So I guess you could look at that one of two ways. We capitalized in the red zone when we had the turnovers, when the special teams and the defense created them. But also, we couldn't score without that. We couldn't go
You
put
could make a full drive.
yeah, right, a full drive together. We had to rely on a punt muff and then a 54-yard punt return in order to score. So like there are positives of like, oh, we capitalized on those opportunities, but still concerned that we didn't score a touchdown until the second half. And then when we did, it was off of turnovers, not a long drive.
Yeah, I think that's a concern, not being able to make a full drive, and not like you said, those touchdowns weren't until the second half. So like our starting, like, not obviously there were guys out, backup QB, not first choice wide receiver, but that's as close as you're gonna get to first team against first team in that first half, and we couldn't score. And that's definitely a cause for concern, especially with Mason Rudolph. And going back to what you were saying about the O-line, not only does that make Najee Harris a question mark, but that also makes Ben Roethlisberger another huge question mark, because Ben is obviously getting up there in age. He's one of those quarterbacks where you need to have that good offensive line, or else he will not be able to play 17 games.
Mm.
And
Absolutely.
we saw it a couple seasons ago, right, in 2019, where he went down. Obviously, it wasn't the O-line issue, but like in 2019, but even historically throughout Ben's whole career, we've seen concussions, we've seen broken noses, we've seen all these different injuries. Ben Roethlisberger is someone you need to have a good O-line to ensure he stays protected, because this is where I wanted to bring 2 years ago into it. When he goes down, I'm still not convinced by the backups. Mason Rudolph did not have a convincing performance. Dwayne Haskins, yes, he's made progress, but it really seems like with him, the only way to go is up, considering the season he had in Washington.
Well,
He's still a question mark, big one too.
yeah, I think Dwayne Haskins, at best, like you said, is a question mark. Now with Mason, I think where people are upset is because I know there were two throws in particular that I can think on third down that could have kept drive alive that he missed. Now, granted, I think, like I said, Claypool should have caught that, but the second one, I believe it was to the outside line, out of bounds line, and he overthrew him, and he was pretty open. And if he no, you know what? It was a crossing route that he threw behind. That's what it was. It was a crosser that I believe Deontay was on a linebacker, and he threw it behind, so the linebacker caught him. And it was like if you put that out in front, he runs and goes and gets the first down. But that's the thing, right? That separates backup quarterbacks from starting quarterbacks. Starters make those throws. They lead the receiver. They don't, overlead him like in the case of the Claypool one, but they don't throw behind him in case of the Deontay one, right? Because on an NFL football field with an NFL defense, those plays will be made by a defense, right? You throw it behind them, that defender's going to catch him, right? You throw that ball a little too front, the receiver now has to think about the safety, right? And I don't think any of us want to get hit by a 6'2", 225-pound safety, And I think when Claypool dropped it, even though you don't want to see him drop it, he was thinking about that. It's your first game in almost a year, or since we were eliminated by the Browns, and you're running that in deep post, and that's thrown a little bit in front of you. If you got to lean, you're walking right into that safety, and that's a tough thing. But if you put that on the body, he can now hit the ground and set himself and brace himself for the hit, as opposed to lunging and leaving himself wide open. So little things when we're talking quarterbacking in the National Football League, where that stuff matters. Right? It may not matter in college because Devontae Smith is so much better than anyone who's covering him, right? It may not matter in high school, but at the NFL level, those precision where you put those passes matter. And if you can't hit them, you're not going to have a successful offense if your quarterback cannot routinely make those throws. And because remember, Mason Rudolph isn't mobile. He's not what Prime Ben was. He's not what Josh Dobbs is. He's a pocket passing quarterback. So if you're a pocket passing quarterback and can't make, those upper echelon throws on a consistent basis, then you're really going to struggle in this league.
Definitely agree there. So let's pivot now that we've talked extensively about the offense. Let's pivot to the defense. And for the most part, like obviously giving up 3 points, looked at on the surface, and indeed it was a good showing overall, but it's been the topic time and again for Steelers defenses, I think historically, but it really came evident in this game, the big plays. And we saw that again yesterday. Luckily, Dallas wasn't able to capitalize on them, but in the regular season, against better offenses, against starting NFL quarterbacks, that's going to cost you. And so that's definitely something we have to iron out.
It is. I think just to highlight a couple of performances, I liked what I saw from Highsmith.
Yes. Especially after Dupree.
Yes, replacing Dupree. I think either had a sack or put a good hit on the quarterback. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm concerned about the secondary. Justin Lane. When they put Justin Lane in, man, he got beat 2 or 3 times. And he's had some off the field issues. Since between season 1 and season 2. So Justin Lane's a question mark. Joe Hayden's not getting younger. And he didn't play, so we can't really judge on what Joe Hayden's doing. TJ Watt, again, I understand why he didn't play. Yeah, like I said, there were a couple backup defensive backs where I'm like, I like the way you played. There's so many people because of training camp. It's gonna be hard to remember all their names. But whoever number 17 is, he had a couple good pass deflections. Granted, I didn't think he played until the 3rd or 4th quarter. Trey Norwood, who's I believe from Oklahoma, I think he has a shot to make the team as a cornerback. Marcus Allen, that weird safety linebacker who feels like he's been here for like 5-6 years. I don't know if he makes the team. I don't know what he brings. But when we get into especially the second half of these games, you're looking at your special team players. But from the starters, yeah, I think we gave up a couple chunk plays, but we held in the red zone. We didn't give up any touchdowns. So I think, and again, I think what the defense is important to remember, they were missing 6 dudes. 7, right? It was Cam, Stephon, TJ, Joe Hayden, Mika Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds I don't think played. So you're missing 6 guys on the defensive side. So I'm not too concerned yet. Once we get a preseason game where we get the entire defense together, I think we can be more critical and analyze that a little bit more. But from what I saw, I'm not mad at it. And like I said, I like the way Highsmith played, and Justin Lane's still a huge concern for me.
Yeah, I think that's really, like you said, once you got into the second half, you're getting to scrub territory and guys who, some of whom might not even make the 53. But interesting stat in the first half. Yes, we were missing 6 guys, but this is not something you want to see. 17 out of 26. That was Cooper Rush's line, 174.
And it's not like Cooper Rush is a good quarterback either.
Exactly. He was behind Garrett Gilbert.
And that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah. 13 first downs Cooper Rush got. Luckily, we tightened up in the red zone, which is always something you like to see. And we held them to that 1 field goal, and we got some turnovers to kind of save ourselves. But, it's those big plays, and you can't let Cooper Rush let Cooper Rush just dictate a game the way he did. Like I said,
Also,
6 guys out,
yeah,
but
6, I think.
but schematically also maybe I don't know if it's like I said, something schematically wrong, or like you said, we have to kind of wait it out a couple weeks, because if the starters come in and we're seeing the same issues, then you've got to look at the coaching aspect of the game of the game and seeing what is wrong there.
So
But
here's a question for you. Just kind of, spitballing. As a fan, do you put Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin on the hot seat this season? Is this a season after last year, right? Go 11-0, you lose 4 out of the next 5, you get embarrassed by one of our biggest rivals at home in the first round of the wild card round in the NFL playoffs. We've disappointed since 2017 when we lost to Blake Bortles. Then did we lose to someone? Who did we lose to in between Cleveland and Jacksonville?
New England? Was that
Someone.
was that the Chris Hogan game, or was that before Jacksonville?
I thought that was before Jacksonville.
Yeah, you're right. The Chris Hogan game was before Jacksonville.
Because you lost in 2017.
Obviously to Jacksonville, and then in 18,
what happened in 18?
we missed the playoffs.
Okay, what happened in 19?
We missed the playoffs because Ben got hurt. Remember? Went 8 with Duck and Rudolph.
No, that was 20. No, 20 we got bounced. Okay, wait.
Yeah, 20 was the Browns game. Remember?
Okay, so 17 we lose to Jacksonville, 18 and 19 we miss, and then 20 we lose to the Browns. So if you go for the past 4 years, that's 2 not making the playoffs, 2 you lose in the first game you played, even though Jacksonville was technically the second round, but we had to bye. Are they on the hot seat for you?
So here's the thing. I think it's tied to Ben Roethlisberger. I think when he if Tomlin does not have a good season, and this is Ben's last year, I think he's got to go. But if Ben ends up staying, I don't think we can let Ben outlast Tomlin in this team, because I think putting a new coach on Ben Roethlisberger in the twilight of his career, I know Tom Brady just did it, but that's just kind of unneeded pressure when you're keeping him on the same team, and unneeded just complexity. So I think we just got to ride with Tomlin at least until Ben hangs it up or somehow moves teams, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I think should they be on the hot seat? I would say yes, they should be. But my thing is, will the Rooneys put them on the hot seat?
Exactly. The Rooneys have not fired a head coach in over 50 years. Both Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher voluntarily stepped down of their own accord. The Rooneys have not had to fire a head coach since the guy before Chuck Noll. I don't even know who that is.
Me either. I'd have to go ask my dad who that is. Yeah, so that's my concern. I think they should. I think there's an argument that they should be put on the hot seat, but I'm with you. I don't know if they're going to be on the hot seat. And then one other thing on two other things on the preseason game are coming out of the preseason game that we know so far. The punter, I think, was their MVP. We actually had a functional punter because, as Steeler fans know, Jordan Berry has not gotten the job done for the 5 years he's been here, which is about 5 years too long. So the punter had one within the 1 yard line, which I thought was really cool to see. So yay for the punter. And James Washington, kind of breaking news at the time we're recording this, has requested a trade.
Yeah. I guess he saw all the dropped passes and was wondering why he wasn't playing.
Correct. So I guess my question to you will be thoughts on the James Washington trade, or if you will get traded, do you want him traded? And if you do, what would be a good return for that?
Unfortunately, when you come out and request a trade, your return is usually diminished, because you never, one of the top rules in negotiating is you never say outright something is available, because then it's on clearance or on sale essentially, and they'll know that since the player's available, they won't have to pry him away from you. And since they're looking to basically give him away. The return won't be as much as if we just traded him outright. But like after seeing hopefully hopefully it was just like mental. And again, going back to the mental thing, and we were talking about Dwayne Haskins. Hopefully our receivers can get over that, especially now that you don't request a trade and then come back. Usually that doesn't work out well. That might only make things worse within the team and make the receiving core more likely to make mistakes, because Washington's already burning the bridge before he has to cross it, in a way. And like I said, once you request a trade, it's too awkward. I don't want another AB situation. I'm tired of dealing with all the drama we've had to deal with. Last year, obviously, did not end well, but I was super glad that there was less drama than there was.
Well, yeah, the drama was created on the field.
What?
I said the drama was created on the field.
Exactly, and not off of it like it was with AB and Le'Veon, but more so AB. But that's why I think he's got to go, because if he stays, then it just starts all over again. And we cannot, after seeing what that did to this team, we cannot have another situation like that. You can't function like that.
That's a good point. I mean, I thought James Washington, I don't think he's lived up to potential so far.
Agreed.
I don't think he's been awful though. He hasn't been like Lima Swede or Sandy.
Why'd you have to make me remember that?
Football team. So I think he's been a serviceable player. I don't know. If you could get a 4th or 5th round pick for him, I'd trade him.
Yeah.
And a 4th or 5th round pick may turn into something. You never know. But I would like to see him stay. He's a good receiver. I think he gives something to this team. Yeah. But I'm with you. All the drama. Like, look what the Packers are going through right now with the Green Bay Packers.
Aaron Rodgers, that whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I followed like a Packer YouTuber, and like the stress that he's been under about trying to like report this and let all the fans know has been interesting to see. But that's been a lot of drama in Green Bay. So I'm with you. I'm happy with the no drama and just trying to play some football.
It was a breath of fresh air after.
Because remember, even before AB, it was a Le'Veon Bell contract.
Yeah, exactly. And at least that one was just about money and not personal issues.
And not like, throwing couches off windows.
Yeah, at least he stayed out of the team and just chilled in Miami.
True.
Trying to start some rap career, if I remember right.
Yeah, he released a mixtape. I don't know how well it was. Actually, they both did. AB and Lev both released rap albums, which I just find great. I give Mike Tomlin so much credit for keeping that locker room together for as long as he did.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I think if Dwayne Haskins could succeed anywhere, it would probably be here, because Mike Tomlin has done a really good job of keeping like people in line. Like he kept AB together for almost a decade until he finally blew up, and he was able to keep the team together after that. So if he can work some of that voodoo magic on on Dwayne Haskins, then we have ourselves a solid backup QB. Maybe even the future if and when Ben hangs it up. But again, that's super optimistic, and we're only a preseason game in. So much too early to make that call.
Crowning these boys Super Bowl champions yet, right?
Oh, yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, let's talk some Penguin hockey here. As you all know, between season 1 and season 2, an
entire season took place.
An entire season took place, which we will do better with since we have actually carved our time for this podcast now. So we will do a much better job, and season 2 will be much, much longer than season 1 was, hopefully covering all 3 seasons. But, they lost embarrassingly to the Islanders. A lot of hoopla was made for that. They lost Brandon Tanev to the Seattle Kraken. And they've signed some players. They re-signed Zach Aston Reese. They've brought back Dominic Simone. Signed McGinn. So they brought some players. Lost some players, obviously. Tight against the cap once again. Overall, I'm not gonna ask you to grade the season count. That was too far away.
Oh yeah.
But how do you grade the offseason that we've had so far? What grade do you give Brian Burke and Ron Hextall?
I think like nothing truly impressed me, but like it's got to be somewhere in the middle, like B minus, C plus. I think like bringing back Dominic Simone was a real question mark. You know, at least he's good at staying healthy. Because
One
thinking
thing I
back,
do want to ask you about in specifics, the Jared McCann trade. I know there was a lot of question marks within the fan base, some confusion. What are your thoughts on the Jared McCann trade?
I think it's too early to call, but because on the one hand, but like, because we got so obviously he had a great season a year ago. I really like what I saw from him, but like I said, you had to do it because otherwise he would have been gone instead of Tanev. And you at least want to get something back for him. So I guess it was kind of like our hand was pretty much forced in that regard. So obviously the return isn't going to be quite as much as what you want.
See, I think it helps if you look at it big picture wise, right? So we covered this a little bit on the podcast. I think this was in our last episode, was the Kasperi Kapanen trade.
Yes, I think that was.
Where we gave up Philip Hollander and a first round pick and Evan Rodriguez for Kapanen. So if you combine the two trades together, we got Kasperi Kapanen for Jared McCann in the first rounder. Because Evan Rodriguez was cut by the Leafs, and then we re-signed him on a new deal, and then Philip Hollander, who we traded over, the Leafs gave back.
I guess
for Kapanen, we only gave McCann in a first. And if you look at it like that, I think it's a much, much easier to stomach the trade.
Okay. Yeah, because that is a good point. It does give you a new perspective on it because I was taking the trade at face value and I'm thinking, that return is not impressive. But when you look at it big picture, when you look at the trade overall, combining the Kapanen and McCann deals, I think it was pretty fair. And we got a first out of it?
Seventh.
A seventh. We got a seventh. Yeah, we got a seventh out of it. And we got one of the guys back who we traded. And Kapanen was good. I was not liking that trade initially, but he proved me wrong this past season. He had a really good season this year. Obviously, it sucks to lose a guy like McCann, but as we speak, I think my opinion of the trade is changing a little bit. But like I said, we got to see production from.
Thoughts on Tristan Jarry?
Oh boy, he's reminding me a lot of Marc-Andre Fleury pre-2016. Because he had such a good regular season, man. He was looking like a Vezina candidate all year. Then the playoffs come, and he is a total train wreck. A total train wreck. He put up disaster class after disaster class. I don't know what he was thinking half the time. He was playing the puck right into the slot for the Islanders. That was one of the worst goaltending performances over 5 games I've ever seen. I genuinely think if DeSmith was healthy, we win that series in 5 rather than losing that in 5. That is how bad the goaltending was in that series.
I agree with that. So my next question then is, would you like to see Jari traded, or do you give him another year? Knowing that this is Letang and Gino's last contract year, so they're going to be having some interesting negotiations. I'm sure we'll talk about it as the time gets closer on the podcast of what to do with those contracts and those players.
I was really bummed when Marc-Andre Fleury accepted that he would play for the Blackhawks because I was so looking forward to him coming back to Pittsburgh, especially after finally getting that well-deserved Vezina. I still can't believe that after all these years, he finally won his first Vezina after so long in the league. But that's what happens when you're in the league at the same time as Brodeur, and at least for the first part of his career, he was with Brodeur
Lundqvist
and Lundqvist, pretty much his whole career, and others.
Carey
Price as well. It was really hard to break through. But kudos to Fleury for finally getting it done. And it was kind of a crappy thing for Vegas to do, just springing trade at him like that. It's such a slap in the face when your player finds out he gets traded the same way everyone else does. Like, there's no excuse for doing that to a player who got you to the Stanley Cup Finals in your first season as an NHL franchise, and then just won the Vezina Trophy with your team. But unfortunately, fortunately, I guess for the Blackhawks, Fleury looks to have accepted the fact that he will be in Chicago next season. But now that he's off the table, I think we just got to ride with him. I mean, there were calls to get rid of Fleury after his playoff performances, similar to what Jari did. I still think Jari's playoff performance was worse than anything Fleury ever did. But I guess it's just a mindset thing. We've been talking about mental games so much this podcast, but it just rings so true, especially with Tristan Jarry and the playoffs. You know, he was obviously with the team for those back-to-back cups. He was with the team for those 2 rounds, but he's still kind of inexperienced in the playoffs. And
it's difficult, right? Because like my thing is, in normal circumstances, I wouldn't mind giving him another year. But if you know this may be like Gino and Letang's last year, do you really want to ride maybe their last opportunity at winning a cup with the Penguins on Tristan Jarry?
exactly. But who's available
That's another question.
And that's why you just got to ride it out. Like I said, I was dead set on bringing Marc-Andre Fleury back for that time where he was super bummed out that he went to Chicago without anyone telling him. But now that he's gotten over it, and now that he's accepted that, unfortunately, that will not happen. And I just don't know who else to turn to.
Because my plan was going to be you bring Fleury back, right? Because my entire thing was, if Fleury's like, I don't want to play for Chicago, then you call Chicago and be like, he's going to be up against the cap anyway. So why don't we give you something, right? And you get something in return. And then we'll take Fleury because this is where he wants to be. And then this is Fleury's last contract year, too. So you would give, and Sid signed until 2023, I believe. Or 24.
Something like that.
Something like that. He's got a couple more years.
Yeah.
And then my thing would be, all right, this is your last chance. And I wouldn't sign Gino again. I wouldn't sign Letang. And I wouldn't sign Fleury. And that would open a projected $18 million up against the cap. And then, I mean, let's be real. Jack Eichel's frustrated in Buffalo. Connor McDavid's getting frustrated in Edmonton. Toronto's another disaster because they can't get out of the first round to save their soul. So you may be looking up a big star, right, who may be coming up into that trade range. And then how easy would it be if you have $18 million open to convince maybe a McDavid or an Austin Matthews or a Mitch Marner to be like, hey, you still have a couple more years of Sidney Crosby left. We're proven winners. We've won 3 times since 2009. Y'all are coming from organizations where you haven't won in 30, 40, 50, 60 years. We've proven we can win in recent memory. Why don't you come here and then try to win again while you still have a couple more years of Crosby, and then you can burn it down and try again.
Yeah. Unfortunately, bringing Fleury back's off the table, but I really do like that idea, and I think it's like basically it's gonna be really sad for Gino and Tanger, but their hopes just gotta be riding on playoff Tristan Jarry, or I should say regular season Tristan Jarry to show up when the playoffs begin.
I was gonna say we don't want playoff Tristan Jarry.
I know. I was gonna say playoff Tristan Jarry to go away, but I found out with a better way to phrase it. But unless regular season Jarry shows up in the playoffs, we're screwed. But
because my thing too is, even if he does screw up and you truly don't bring Letang and Malkin back, you still are gonna have like $12 to $15 million.
That's what I was gonna get to. So I really like the plan.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, you can still get like an $8-9 million player and still have room for another either $5-6 million goaltender or defenseman if you don't want to bring Jarry back, or even if Jarry has a good playoffs and then you can spend that on Letang's replacement.
Yeah.
Then how since Crosby's still playing at such a high level, you have him for like 23 to 24. You can still convince a couple stars to come here and maybe have another run, because you just don't know about Gino's injury and just things like that.
Of course. But So moving right along, then our final talking point of the podcast. It's time to once again talk about the insufferable Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team. And well, I will say one thing I am happy about is we finally have a general manager who is committed to tearing it all down. Because Neil Huntington was not willing to tear it down, but at the same time was not willing to go all in, although the latter is more on the owner than the GM. But when you have an owner that's not willing to go all in, you have to recognize when the window's done and when to blow it up. And that is something that Neil Huntington refused to acknowledge. But Ben Cherington is taking the first step to climbing back up that ladder, and that is blowing it up. We saw over the offseason Josh Bell off to the Washington Nationals. We saw this season, or we also saw last season Jameson Taillon to the Yankees. We saw a whole bunch of stars get moved. Obviously, one of our all-stars, Adam Frazier, he was off to the San Diego Padres. And I know a lot of people said that we didn't get a top 100 prospect from the Padres, but frankly, Frazier's still unproven on the wide scale because this has been his breakout season. This is essentially his career year. So you don't know if this is going to be like a one season wonder type thing or if he's going to have a sustained success, especially considering his high batting average of balls in play indicates that he might just be having a lucky year. But we have to wait and see if next season he can continue that success. So I think the return for the Frazier trade was fair. And I think that we're really doing a good job at beefing up the system. Another thing I was really impressed with is Cherington's ability to sign all of our top draft prospects. We were able to pry a guy out of Penn State, which I thought was really cool. He's going to play baseball instead of playing football for Penn State.
It was Clemson, I thought.
Them too. We got one from Clemson. I think there are 2 4-stars, one from Clemson, one from Penn State. Which I was really surprised. But we pulled it off. Our signing bonuses.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is that I'm looking at the minor league organization, Because in reality, there is no one who is on this team right now who should be here when we're competing again. And so if you look at the minor league or our minor league depth, we have the top rated farm system in the league. We had the number one draft in the league as well, graded by MLB Pipeline. So you have the number one farm system and then have added to that the top draft. So you can see just this piling into prospects, right? Now, my concern is obviously the development of those prospects because you can have them, but if you don't develop them, it's useless. So that's issue number one. And issue number two is I don't trust Derek Shelton. Derek Shelton hasn't shown me anything. Derek Shelton, for me, has made questionable managerial decisions. Very questionable managerial decisions. So, for me, I'm not sure he's the man in charge. I have a lot more faith in what GM Ben Cherington's doing than what manager Derek Shelton's doing.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Like, I don't think there's much that Derek Shelton can do with this right now. I think is real. But at the same time, you want to make sure that they're in good hands when they get up here. I'm not convinced on Ben Cherington to be the man, or not Ben Cherington. I'm convinced on Ben Cherington. I'm not convinced on Derek Shelton to be the manager for the future, but I'm not willing to abandon ship on that just yet. I think we're still a little bit too early.
I'm full on fire Shelton mode.
It's his first. I'll give him one more season. This is his first. Remember that this is his first full season as manager.
Yeah, okay, but look at some of the decisions he's making with the bullpen. He had the bullpen taxed by June because he wouldn't let a starter go more than 4 innings. And not only that, the reason Brian Reynolds didn't play 2 days ago was because he's been sliding and diving too much. What a joke! Like people who may listen to this podcast probably not soccer fans because it's not big in this country, and I get that. But you and I are. People complain about soccer players being wimps. Dude, baseball players are just as bad, if not worse. He can't play a Major League Baseball game because he slid and dove a lot recently? What a joke! Could you imagine Sidney Crosby's like, oh, I'm not going to play a game against the Philadelphia Flyers because, I've skated around a lot recently, so, like, sorry.
They've been taking inspiration from the NBA. The two words that have been haunting them, load management. It's become so taboo that it's not something Derek Shelton will say, and I don't agree with it either because it's stupid in baseball. At least when you're setting them this much. But like this reeks of LeBron sitting out every like 3 games, or insert star here sitting out every so often. And when you have the only player that's actually gonna like sell you tickets and like bring you in viewers now, especially with the whole team growing up, he is the face of the franchise now. You can't afford to sit him as often as you are. Like, I'm surprised Nutting hasn't talked to him and said, hey, look, I got to make my money somehow. But I digress.
No, I'm with you. And, like, I don't know, the way he's handled the bullpen in some aspects lead me to be concerning. Because if you keep pulling starters after 5 innings of baseball, and then you tax your bullpen when eventually this team, hopefully, fingers crossed, is contending again, and that costs you games. Like, look what happened when we had the 98 win season, I'm not saying it was Hertl's fault, but we had a couple questionable losses that cost us the division. And instead of having an entire series to face a team, we only had a wild card game and we lost. So you mismanage a game here or there, that can come and bite you.
Definitely.
Though what I will say is Chicago sucks again, and I'm kind of happy about that.
Yeah, I know they finally blew it up. Bryant, Rizzo, all those players are gone.
So
Um,
you would think we're gonna have a good chance because hopefully our division, after years of it being so strong, is weakening.
Hopefully, because that was always tough with, especially in 2015 when you had the three best teams in baseball all in one division.
That was such a how unlucky was that?
I know we won 98 games and we only got to play in the playoffs once, but I digress.
So quick PSA announcement before we stop this episode. So we have a new schedule and one that first let's start. Let's go backwards. I'm gonna rewind. I'm gonna explain kind of why we disappeared and the reasons for that, and then kind of what we're gonna be doing going forward to make sure that doesn't happen again. Because Ron and I do enjoy doing this. Sports, as anyone in our personal life knows, is one of our biggest passions. So we do enjoy doing this. We enjoy talking and doing this podcast. Even if we don't get a lot of listeners, I think we just enjoy it, and it's a good hobby to have, especially since we both are kind of hard majors and can spend a lot of time working. Um, so what happened? So we had a schedule of 3 podcast episodes a week going into school, and we thought we could do that because COVID restrictions were kind of strict at where we go to school. So we thought, we would have a lot of downtime, and we could get it done, and it wouldn't be that bad. Well, I would say two main things happened. One, three actually, at least on my end. And Ryan, you can discuss your thoughts on what kind of happened. One is there was a friend in our personal life who was a freshman last year, and we love him, one of our closest friends. But he took up a ton of our time, a ton of it. Because it was almost nightly. It'd be like, oh, want to go to the cafe for 3 hours? Want to go to the cafe for 3 hours? And we did. And so it's kind of hard to do a podcast when you're supposed to be in bed at midnight and you don't go to bed till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because our friend wanted to talk to us. And this friend is obviously still in the picture, one of our best friends, but he has night class this semester. And he has matured a lot in the year. And so hopefully will not depend on us as much. Number 2, night class. Ron and I both had night class. His was on Monday, mine was on Thursday. And it's difficult, especially because mine was in the spring, his was in the fall. So his was on Monday, and it was difficult for Ryan, right, when we would have a weekend of football. And that's Pitt football, that's Steeler football, right? That's, the Penguin season when it would kick off. For him to spend 4 hours in a night class and then try to talk for an hour and a half, 2 hours on a podcast was a lot for him. And I think he would, when it's his turn to talk, I think he'll reiterate that. It was a lot because he would come to me and say, I can't podcast today. I'm just mentally exhausted from night class. And which is completely respectable. And then I had one on Thursday, and we're in a a Christian youth group type thing for college students on Thursday. So Thursday night was never the best for us to begin with, and then I had night class on Thursday, so that really worsened the blow. And I think the third thing is just that college life. I picked up running. Running's always been a hobby, but I ran for the club team. And I made a lot of friends through that. And being an engineering student, and he's an sci student, it was just a lot, and we didn't manage our time the best. We let a lot of things distract us that probably shouldn't have, aka females. Let's be real. So I think there's just a lot of mistakes on our end. But this year, with another year of maturity, and with certain friends being gone just because they graduated, they were seniors. I think we're gonna have more time on our hands, and we have a set schedule, which I'll get into right now. It's gonna be Monday and Thursday, so we're gonna record and hopefully release them.
Fridays, I thought.
Mondays and Fridays. I lied. See, I was thinking about the CCO. LOL.
I was gonna say we can't do Thursdays.
No, we can't. We can't. That was the thing. We tried to do days we couldn't do. So Mondays and Fridays are going to be days we can do. And so this is going to describe Monday's episodes are going to recap the weekend. So we're going to recap Pitt football, we're going to recap Steeler football, and then when the Penguin season kicks around, if they play on the weekend, we'll recap that. And then we'll just probably briefly talk about the Pirates because we both know where this team's going, nowhere. Until for the next couple of years. So that's going to be Monday's episode. Recap the Steelers and Pitt, and then talk about other things around the league, and then talk about the Penguins and if they played on Friday and the weekend, and kind of touch around other things in the NHL. And then Friday's podcast will recap the week of maybe like injuries, trades, whatnot within the week of Pittsburgh sports, and then we'll preview the weekend. So we'll talk about what happened during the week, and then we'll kind of give our opinion and thoughts on the weekend games. And so that's much more manageable because our friend has night class, so it won't bother us on Monday. And Fridays, if you've ever been to college, Friday, not a lot goes on Friday. Friday afternoon's pretty light. And then if we record, because when's your last class on Friday?
Oh, I forget, but we'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll be fine. So we record Friday afternoon, and then that still leaves Friday night open for us to do whatever college students do. So granted, we're not drinkers or heavy partiers, but we still do hang out with our friends Friday and Saturday nights. So that will leave those nights open. We hit Friday afternoon and Monday afternoon, or Monday night, depending on the schedule. So, any thoughts of why we stopped and how and the plan on to not stop this time?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Chris. I don't think there's much more to be said.
All
right. So I think with that, I think that's just about all for this episode. Now, I do want to make a quick note that next week, next Friday, we will not have an episode because I will actually be volunteering at the U.S. Amateur Golf Championship, which is going to be held at Oakmont Country Club. So Friday, so it'll be one episode a week, unless we reschedule, Chris, but we'll talk about that later. We'll update you guys on that. But until Monday, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Chris.
And we will see you next time on the Pittsburgh Sports Cast. So long, everybody. Have a happy August day.